religion, in some of the negation of materialistic philosophy. So the materialistic philosophy goes on into saying that matter is the beginning of mankind, or the beginning of universe. Everything started from matter and not from God. So he negates that. And then today he goes into lesson number 16, explaining, Maulana Syed explains the oneness of God. So let's talk about oneness of God. And before he goes into the Burhan, or the proof on the oneness of God, he explains shirk. Shirk is basically holding associates with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to have partners, to believe in partners of Allah. So it says that, there are many different reasons why people go into believing in different gods or various gods, and people who believe in the partners of God. And there are many societies that are diluted with complete shirk, or that are disbelievers in God. So let's say about 7.6 billion or 7-8 billion people in the world. And amongst those that believe in God, or believe in one God, are the Abrahamic faiths, Jews, Christians, and Muslims. So around 2.2 billion Christians and 1.8 billion Muslims. So more than 50%, more than 4 billion people in the world are Christians or Jews, which ideally believe in one God. So even Christians don't say that there are three gods, but they do believe in Trinity, but they say there is one God. Anyway, I don't want to go into that. So the Jews also believe in one God. Even the Hindus say that God is one. Upar wala ek hai. The God that runs the universe is one. But nevertheless, even Sikhs believe in one God, or even Buddhists say that God is one. Anyway, I don't want to go into that. But anyway, so majority of the people are still believers, and majority of those believers are monotheist. So there are polytheists, but what are the reasons? Now, there can be many, many reasons for polytheism. And the biggest countries for shirk were, and still probably are, like many people are in denial of God, like the atheist. So China for shirk and for idol worshipping, India, Egypt, and there were many other countries, but like Iran. So these were the pioneers, or these were the founding, well, because these are the oldest civilizations, China, India, Egypt, Iran, these are very old civilizations. So therefore they had a lot of shit. But then India has the largest Muslim population. Iran is a Muslim country now, so it has very small population of non-Muslims, and predominantly Shia. Anyway, Egypt is now a Muslim country as well, so it doesn't have any shirk. But China remains either atheist or so what is the background to shirk? So there are many historical accounts. So there is a theory that says that people started off with shirk. So people believed in many, many gods. And then they started believing in less gods. So they started having one god for per tribe or something. And then people started believing in three gods, and then two, and then one. And now science has advanced, so we believe in one God. That's one theory. Well, historically, this is wrong, because people started off believing in one God, and then they went on to believing in two gods. Maulana Syed explains that, two gods. Like these Zoroastrians believed in two gods, They said that there are two gods, one for good things, one for evil. Good and evil. Yazdan is basically the god of good, and Ahriman is the god of evil. The doom, the god of evil things. So the good god sends rain, and the bad god sends flood. The good god sends wind, and the bad god sends tornado. So historically, this is wrong that people started off with believing in many gods. There's a hadith by Imam Sadiq al-Islam in Ilal al-Shara'i of Sheikh Saduq, as Imam al-Islam says, how did people started worshipping idols? If you look at the Chinese history, they also mention it. But they don't mention it from Imam Sadiq al-Islam, but Imam Sadiq says it in the Shia world, that in olden days, population was very low, very, few people. And if an elderly person or a family member died, people would miss them for a very long time. They could not get over the tragedy of losing a loved one. So they would cry and cry, and then Shaitan convinced them that, oh, who are you missing? And they said, we're missing our grandfather or father or whoever, or son. So he said, why don't you make their statue? Whenever you miss them, you can, you can look at it, stare at it. And slowly they started doing sajda to them, and slowly they started worshipping them, and they slowly started believing that their ancestors were their lords. So the Chinese also believe that. Anyway, so some believe in the sun and moon to be gods because, and the stars because they were providing them energy and light. So many, many different reasons why people believe in gods. And for example, and people, the idol worshippers did all sorts of things for their gods to please them. And the old pagan Arabs believed that angels are daughters of God. The Holy Quran also mentions, Alhamul Banina Wallah Banat, do they have believed that they have sons and God has daughters? So he mentions, all of these details in the first half of the lesson. And then came in, people with power. So power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Like people with absolute power started saying to them, Ana Rabbukum al-A'la, we are your lords. So they never claimed to be ilah. They did not claim that we are God. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, they say God, but they said Rabb. Because we provide for you, we are your provider, we are your lords, we are your gods. We deserve your obedience, and we deserve your worship. Serve us and worship us and obey us. Like Namrods, and pharaohs, like other, kings, and, so in the current climate, even, many of the powerful people, they don't say we are gods, we are your gods. But they act like gods, they order you and they expect you to obey. Absolutely. Anyway. So there are many different reasons for why people go into becoming mushrikeen polytheist. And Abdullah Misbah said that in lesson 10, we proved that the creator, the provider Lord, is the one worthy of worship, or deity. Deity, yeah? So now there are many, many different proofs that the theologians and philosophers and mystics have mentioned in their books to prove oneness of God. Abdullah Misbah says that we will not go into all of those long debates and long, like so many proofs. He says we will mention one burhan, one proof on the existence of, or not the existence of God, that we've done on oneness of God. So only one proof on the oneness of God. What is that proof? So he says that if we believe that there are two or more gods, basically because we believe in oneness of God, so even two, three, or more gods makes no difference. So two or more gods. So if a person believes in gods rather than the God or a God, they believe in gods. So there are two or more gods. Then there are only three possibilities, he argues. Atala Misbah, as he argues, on, well, two assumptions, main assumptions. Firstly, that it can be assumed that every phenomenon of the universe is created and is in effect of all the assumed gods. Assumed gods. So, for example, if a person believes in two or three or more gods, then every phenomenon that we see is created by all of those. So either they've all coming together. So if there are two gods, then both of them have created everything. If there are three gods, and they've all three of them have created me, for example. So they've created everything. The second assumption could be that each particular group of phenomenon is an effect or creation of one of the assumed gods. So, for example, one God created the sun, the other one created the earth, the third one created another star, so they all created different stars. For example, one created all of these 10,000 stars, and then the other one. And the third assumption, Ayatollah Misbah says, is, finally, the third assumption is that all phenomenon are created by one of these gods, and the other gods are recognized as managers of this universe. So they are running the universe. So one is creator. So the first assumption is that they all created us. Each one of the phenomena, each. So all gods have played a role in creation of each and everything. Second assumption is that some of them have created some things. So if there were two gods, let's say half the world is created by one, the other half is created by the other. And the third phenomenon is that no, one created everything, the others are running it. Now, it is impossible to assume that each phenomenon would have several gods, because it would mean that two or more gods would create an existent when each of them would be the creator of an existence, implying that a number of existences would arise when each existent would have one existence. And if this was not the case, there would not be a single existence. So what we're saying is, because we believe that God is, he gives us the creation. He is the creating God. This whole universe is one system, one. This is from philosophy, so I'm going to try and simplify it. I'll give you an ayat from the Holy Quran as well. So it's based on that. He doesn't use that ayat. لو كان فيهما آلهة إلا الله لفسدتا. If there was another God, just one other God other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, between the heavens and the earth, لو كان فيهما آلهة لفسد, then everything will be destroyed. So this is what he's trying to prove. That even if there was one more God, even if there was one other God other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then there would be a chaos. And there is no chaos. This whole universe is running on one system. Nothing crashes. Everything is so well organized. Everything is in place. Nothing is chaotic. So everything is in place is a sign that there is one creator. Everything is the creation of one being. Otherwise, there would be a chaos. Otherwise, there would be, because, like I am my whole body. Okay, I'll give it in a bit. You can search, anything that I say, you can just search it on Google. You can just type it in Arabic, in Urdu these days, or in Farsi, or in English, any language, you type it up, and the verse or the ayat, the hadith comes up. So sometimes I don't say them, but you can type them up. Everything is online. There are libraries online, for example, Shia, iShia. You can just type up anything, and the references of all the books will come. Anyway, you don't have to know the full thing. Just type some words. Anyway. Sorry, can you all hear me?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now, the first proof is that Azal Misbah says that everything is so well, like a running, like everything is one system, one. For example, even in Britain, if there were two governments running at the same time, one was run under uh, one prime minister, and there was another prime minister. He said there will be clash. That clash is a sign that there are two parallel systems running. So even in one country, when you cannot have two systems running, otherwise there'll be clash or conflict or facade. Then how can you have this whole universe so complicated and so big and so enormous and so systematic that it is, so the sun has its own, this is a whole solar system. It has so many planets. Many of those planets have their own moons. Earth has only one. Some have more. Some have none. Everything is on rotation. Everything is on move. Everything is rotating, Surah Yasin says. بِأَجَلٍ مُسَمَّى, in its own orbit. And nothing clashes, nothing crashes, nothing contradicts. So this is a sign that there is one system running. Yes, someone has written it already. Surah number 21, Surah Anbiya, verse number 22. So now, and the second, so if different gods were creating us, there was nothing lacking in one God. And that God has to be perfect. He has to be omnipotent. So he lacks nothing for him to take help from others. So this whole universe is created by one. Secondly, the argument that the assumption, if it is to be assumed that a particular God creates a particular phenomenon, this will imply that each phenomenon exists because of its particular God. Furthermore, it must not require or depend upon any other existence but its own particular God who had created that particular phenomenon. In other words, the assumption of having more than one God necessitates that the order in the universe would be multifarious or deteriorating. In reality, there is only one order, and all phenomena are related and effectual upon each other and at the same time in need of each other. Furthermore, present phenomena are linked with former phenomena, and every coexisting phenomenon creates grounds for future phenomena. Hence, a universe whose parts are linked and related to each other is governed under a single order, and this universe cannot be an effect of several existing causes. So if there were many, many gods creating all of this, there will be chaos. Now, the third, that one creator, and then there are many, many gods that are running it. Now there may be many angels or beings that are running this world, but with the command of Allah, with the order of Allah, without Allah needing them to run them. For example, the Holy Quran says, وَإِذَا تَخْلُقُوا مِنَ الطِّينِ كَآيَةِ الطَّيْرِ بِإِذْنِي, for example, فَتَنْفُخُ فِيهَا فَتَكُونُ طَيْرًا بِإِذْنِي, that if you create a bird with my permission, he says to Hazrat Isa, Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, then and then you blow in it, and then it will become a bird with my command, with my permission. That doesn't mean that, if these are contradictory with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation of oneness, because they are doing anything as Ibrahim or any of the prophets or imams alayhi salam, or the angels are doing things with the will of Allah, with the command of Allah, and with the power from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they are not two systems. They are not equal to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or they are not gods. They are powerful beings with the who are creation of God. Or for mudabbirat amra, for example, the Holy Quran says, and those who direct the affairs of the creatures. So these are not gods, and this also takes away, the whole concept that of vilayat takwini. For example, he says that, there is the vilayat takwini and vilayat tashri'. Vilayat means authority. Takwini is existentiating authority. Exists. So makan, this whole universe has a sun, the moon, this whole kainat, this whole universe. So some people have the authority over it. We believe that the Holy Prophet ﷺ and the Imam have authority over it. So they have this divine authority from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is called vilayat takwiniya. That doesn't mean that they are independent of God. That means that they have the power from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where Allah is not relinquished. He is not, the power when he gives has not been taken away from him. For example, I say, okay, now you can take my presidency, or you can take the prime minister, the premiership from me, and I no longer have it. When Allah gives power, it doesn't mean that Allah has relinquished his power onto others and he doesn't no longer have it. No, he gives, but he still has the full power, and he's above them. Or, for example, the legislative authority, when he gives vilayat tashri'i, alam shari'ah, for example, this is haram halal, it gives authority to certain beings that they can practice this authority. Doesn't mean that Allah's rububiyyat tashri'i has been taken away, his lordship or his creationship. None of those powers have been taken away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So his power remains with him, even if he gives vilayat to other beings, because he's not giving his rububiyyat or uluhiyyat to other beings, he's only giving vilayat to other beings. Okay, so that's lesson number 16. Yes, 16. Now lesson number 17. I'm going to cover lesson number 17 today, and then in the next lesson I'll cover 17, 18 and 19, and then lesson number 20 will be the last lesson on Tawheed. So then the next lesson will be done with Tawheed, and then Adl. One lesson we'll do on Adl, and then we will start Nabuwwat and Imamat. And so today's lesson number 7, isn't it? So 7, 8, Tawheed will be finished. 9 will be Adl. 16 we promised. So 10, 11, 12 probably we will do few lessons on Nabuwwat, and all the things related to them, and then probably Imamat. I'm not sure if I'll be able to cover volume number 3. So this is 3 volumes. Volume number 1 is Tawheed and Adl. Volume number 2 is Nabuwwat and Imamat. Volume number 3 is Imamat. So we may have to do probably after 16 lessons another term for Ma'ad, for the return to Allah. Now lesson number 17, which is basically the meanings or the types of Tawheed, the meaning of the oneness of God. When we say God is one, what does it mean? So in books of philosophy, in books of theology, in books of ethics, in books of mysticism, people have mentioned aqsam Tawheed or maratib Tawheed. They've mentioned either the types of Tawheed or the different levels of oneness of God, Tawheed. And there are many, many long discussions today, but he says that we will choose only a few of those. For example, the first one is the negation of plurality from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So plurality, which is nafi ta'addud. If you look at the hadith from the Imam, they have used these terms. That's where our scholars have taken these terminologies from. Nafi ta'addud, the negation of plurality. So Allah is not plural. Allah is not, there are not many gods. So the first thing, oneness means there is only one God. What does that mean? That in his essence, Allah is one, and there are no two or more gods. Essentially, Allah in his essence is one. And Allah has no other divine being that is God. Allah has not created. So there is only one God. That's called the negation of plurality from Allah. The negation of composition. Nafiye tarkeeb. In Awwaluddin, Imam Ali Islam in his first sermon says, on Tawheed, he says, Awwaluddin ma'rifatul jabbar. The first thing in religion is the recognition of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَكَمَالُ مَعْرِفَتِهِ نَفْيُ الصِّفَاتِ. So there are many, so it's a very long sermon. So the perfection, the complete faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to negate description of God. Don't describe him how he is. Don't describe him. So composition means that you believe in divine essence, oneness of God in his essence, that his essence is simple. He is basit. Basit means simple, meaning he is not murakkab. For example, I am composed of body, composed of blood, I'm composed of hands, all of these are body shape, all of these are compositions. Allah is not composed of anything. You can't say this is head of God. For example, when he says Wajhullah, face of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it doesn't mean he has a face. He does not have a body. Okay, he's not composed of anything. He's simple. He is not composed. And he has no parts. Okay. And in lesson number 10, we went into more details, how we negated that he has no parts. So even in your mind, you should not create parts of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you should negate attributes. Attributes or description is a better word probably, but attributes. Sifat is salbiya. So you should negate composition. Allah is not composed of anything. Third is nafiya sifat is za'id barza. The negation of attributes as additional to his essence. Pay attention to this, is very important. So when you negate attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as additional to his essence, za'id barzat, all attributes of Allah are a part of his essence. All attributes of Allah are a part of his essence. So his attributes are a part of his essence. They are not in addition to his essence. Otherwise, all of those will be separate gods. And this is also called Tawheed Sifati. The first one is Tawheed Zati, and this is called Tawheed Sifati. Tawheed Sifati means the Tawheed, or the oneness of God, Tawheed of attributes, divine attributes, unity of divine attributes, oneness or unity. Yes, unity is a better word. Unity of divine attributes. So all of his attributes are a part of him, and they're all one. He is Alim, Khabir, Jabbar, Sattar, Qahhar. For example, he punishes, he becomes angry, he is merciful, he is all are in one. They're not all separate gods. They're not all independent sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They all mean that there's only one God. And if you think that each one of those attributes are independent, each one of those attributes are separate, then each one of them are gods. Where did the confusion arise? Because they started comparing God to human beings. Well, if a person is merciful, then how can they be a Jabbar, for example? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes, he takes reckoning, or he punishes the evil doers. How can it be Jabbar, punisher? Because he's Rahman. Nothing occurs on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For example, happiness occurs on me. Happiness occurs on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For example, happiness occurs on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For example, happiness occurs on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For example, happiness occurs on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For example, happiness occurs on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For example, happiness occurs on me. Anger, nothing occurs on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, they do not. So you cannot compare him to his creation that, oh, this. So therefore, he's not a body, and none of those things occur on his body. Okay, so he has no body, so nothing occurs on. So all of his attributes are a part of his essence. And he is not composed of different attributes, composed of different feelings. He's wajibul wujud, necessary being. Okay. The fourth one he argues is Tawhid Af'ali. Tawhid Af'ali means the unity of divine actions. Allah in his actions, is one, and it does not require any being or anything to help him do something. He wasn't in need of. Okay, why call him Wajhullah? I'll answer those questions at the end. So he is not in need of any creation help or doing something for him. He can do anything. So he's not in need of anything, but he appoints different things. So anything that his servants have belong to him. And the fifth is, for example, Tawhid Af'al, in his actions, he is not in need of his angels or prophets or anyone. The fifth one is also called Tawhid Af'ali according to the mystics or Afa, which is basically independent effectually. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is independent effectually. This means that creation is not independent of God, and the influences it has within it are with the permission of God and under the power that has been provided by God, the Supreme. The only existence that can influence independently without the aid of any other creation and in all time and space is the divine essence of God. The actions and influences of others are subordinate to his influences and actions and are at the disposal of God. So on the basis of the Holy Quran, anything that for example, even the sun, when it gives us light, it is not independent. It gives the light, for example, through God. Or if the angels give us any rizq or the prophets accept our du'as or anything, these are from God. They are not independent of God. وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى. Allah has the highest example. Another Masbah, as he says, just to make you understand, for example, an officer tells his subordinate to do something. It doesn't mean that the officer lacks the ability to do it or cannot do it, or he is not doing it. For example, a big officer, the commissioner comes in and says, yes, our police has done this. Well, he hasn't done it. It's the soldiers that have done it. Or the police constables have done it. But he says, we have come. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, Inna anzalnahu, we have revealed the Holy Quran. The angels have brought it. Not that Allah could not send it without angels. So he's not in need of any help, but when he does things through his beings, it only means that he has created this whole universe to be cause and effect, but he's not in need of any of those things. He can still do it without the help. And he can still say, this is my doing. Now, very important thing, he says two results that we draw. I'll quickly read out those two important results. The result of the unity of divine action is that nothing other than God deserves worship. So Tawhid Af'ali means that Allah, he may have angels, prophets, and imams, and so many other awliya, but it doesn't mean that all of those holy beings, or they are reverent to it, they are revered, we respect them, but that doesn't mean that they don't deserve ibadat. Only ibadat is for Allah. So the worship is deserved by Allah alone. Because as we have indicated before, a being does not deserve to be worshipped by just being a creator or a lord. In other words, divinity, uluhiyat, is the necessary condition of lordship and creatorship. So uluhiyat is for rububiyat and khaliqiyat. It is only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. From another angle, the result of monotheism is the letter meaning is that human reliance in its entirety must be upon God. And in all activities, he must be trusted, and only from him should help be requested. Man's fear and hope ought to be with respect to him. And when the resources for the fulfillment of needs are are out of reach, one should not despair, because God is capable of providing for all needs from his supernatural and hidden sources. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inna awliya Allahi la khawfun alayhim wa lahum yahzanun. Now, with such monotheistic outlook in life, mankind would enjoy a special divine authority, vilayat, and have a unique, tranquil soul. So look, the friends of Allah will indeed have no fear, nor will they grieve. These two results have already been placed in the verse that a Muslim recites at all times. Okay? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so we believe that Allah in his ibadat is, divine unity. Ibadat is only deserved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All actions, he does not need anyone. Yes, he may appoint people or angels or beings to do things. Now, as a conclusion, as a result, a doubt comes to mind. What doubt? So then, can we really seek help from the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the imams, the Holy Prophet and imams? Or do we need to exclusively take help from God? Can we take intercession, seek intercession from the imams, or do we not take any intercession or any help from them? Okay. If it even implies that there are avenues through which the bounties and mercies of God can be accessed, then there is no contradiction. If meaning you believe in those holy personalities as gods, then it is wrong. They are not gods. But if you mean that they are bounties and mercies of God, or the bounties and mercies of God can be accessed, then there is no contradiction. Indeed, these intercessions are considered as examples of monotheism in worship and obedience. There is no contradiction between Tawheed and Tawassul, or seeking help from these holy personalities, and Tawheed, or oneness of God. Nevertheless, one may ask why God regulated these types of intercession, and why God allowed human beings to seek intercession from his saints. Why should they seek help or intercession from his saints? The answer to these questions is that the command of God is with wisdom. And the wisdom behind these ordinances is as follows. So 2 points he points out. For the recognition and understanding of the great station of these illustrious servants of God, and to motivate others in the performance. So number one, Allah wanted people to understand and recognize the position of these people, that these human beings are on a very different level to you. Do not say they are like us. They are much higher, and you must, so one. And secondly, in order to prevent some from becoming arrogant because of their worship, and from considering themselves as having a position and station in the realm of perfection, this trait had been found in those who had departed from the divine authority of the Prophet. So many people did a lot of ibadah and they said, I am not in need of any gods, Prophet and Imams. I am strong myself. Then why should I intercede or seek help? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, no, that's why he said, seek help from them, because I have appointed. And there are many, many other reasons. He says that this is a brief book. I'm not going into that. But there is no contradiction between seeking help from the saints or awliya, or the holy personalities like the prophets and the imams alayhi salam, or the shuhada or awliya, and believing in one God. So these are the two simple lessons that we covered about oneness of God. Inshallah, in the next two lessons, we will cover some of the free will and determinism. Inshallah, Jabru Ikhtiyar, we will cover free will and determinism, Jabru Ikhtiyar, and also the divine decree and destiny. Qada wa Qadr, inshallah. These two, inshallah, four of these things we will cover, these two topics, in the oncoming lessons. We will now answer the questions. If you can just read out the questions, I'll try and answer them. So we'll try and answer the questions. Any questions? Hello.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Are we ready for questions, huh?
Yes.
Sorry, I actually had to drop off for a minute, so I missed the end. Okay, questions. I've lost my thread of chat here, so if there was any written question, can somebody type it again? Or yeah,
I'll try.
If you have it there, that's good.
Yeah. Okay. Can you please give? Okay, Surah has been given. Why we call Imam Ali alayhi salam as Wajhullah? Okay. There's only one question. So we have a hadith from the Imam alayhi salam, Wajhullah, for example, or Yadullah, Ainullah, Lisanullah, Udhunullah al-Wa'iyya, for example, Udhunullah in the whole Quran. The hearing ear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the tongue of Allah, or the eyes, or the face of Allah, the hand of Allah. These are metaphors. So Allah does not have a body, He's not a shape. But Imam Sadiq al-Islam says that Allah has created a creation like the Imams alayhi salam, who He calls Wajhullah or Ainullah, that He says that these are metaphors. That Yadullah, through whom He helps, through whom He bestows. Wajhullah, through whom He is recognized. Because we are materialistic people, so we do not, because we cannot perceive God and see Him. So sometimes, through Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam and their creation and their magnificence, we recognize God. Through the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we recognize God. Like our Sunni brothers all believe that, and Sufis, that through the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We know that Allah exists because the Holy Prophet came to this world and he was so magnificent. So that's why you call them Wajhullah or Ainullah. These are from Hadith. Any other questions? Rain is called Rahmatu, which earthquake or tsunami will be Adab. Okay. Rain is called Rahmat. So would earthquake or tsunami will be Adab of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Yet there might be scientific reason of earthquake as to why it happened. Even if there is a scientific reason, that doesn't mean that it may not be Adab. So it can be, but not necessarily it is. So it can be. So if it is amongst Muslims, sometimes certain sins we do causes them. And the earth itself, ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر بما كسبت أيدي الناس. The Holy Quran says that all the corruption that you see on the surface of the earth and in the oceans is the doing of mankind. So we do certain things to cause certain things, and there are scientific reasons for it, but there are ethical reasons for it as well. So we sometimes do certain things that result. Chat. Okay. Sorry. Why haven't they recognized the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam as well? Why who recognized the Ahlul Bayt?
I think this is in relation to your comment about the Sunni brothers and sisters who say that we recognize Allah through the Holy Prophet. I think it's in relation to that.
Okay. I don't want to comment on that too much, but basically through the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you also have to recognize his Ahlul Bayt, and you can prove it from the Holy Quran, the importance, and through the words of the Holy Prophet.
There is another question just came in now. Has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala given vilayat to people other than the Ahlul Bayt?
Vilayat, it may have levels, but the level of vilayat with the 14 infallibles is not with anyone else. But there are others, for example, Hazrat Abbas, Hazrat Zainab, who have vilayat, and others also, but vilayat may be limited, for example. So many people may have vilayat, for example, the prophets have it, and other, but the level of vilayat, because there are levels of vilayat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how can I join class of Islam and contemporary issues? These are all different platforms when I do those, and you can go to their website and then check. Anyway, so the vilayat is authority. And vilayat, there's tafkik. For example, ismat. Ismat has levels. Ilm has levels. Knowledge. Everything, like, for example, light. All lights are not equal. The light of the sun, another star, so there are levels of light. The light bulbs, you have 10 watts and 20, 60, 100. So there are different levels. Tafkik. And there are different levels of infallibility, different levels of knowledge, different levels of adalat even. For example, not everyone is equally adil. Not everyone is equally fair. You may say, okay, these are all adil people. These are all fair people. These are people who are just in their dealings. But they're not all adil equally. Some are more adil than the other. For example, when you say that you require a person who is just, for a marja taqleed has to be just, the judge in the Islamic court has to be just, the person who leads the prayers has to be just, the person who gives witness in the Islamic court has to be just. But are they, is the adalat equally required for all of them? No. The level of adalat or the level of justice required for a person who bears witness is very simple. So long as he looks like a fair person who wouldn't lie, you can accept the gawahi, you can accept their witness. But for the person who you pray behind, they have to be someone who is on a higher level of justice, and the person who is judge has to be much higher level of justice. The marja taqleed, he cannot even do things against murawwat, things which are norms in the society. He can't step out of the norms of the society. So likewise, the vilayat of the Imam alayhi salam, the authority, for example, that they have is beyond our comprehension. And the authority, for example, of some noble people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who have some sort of authority. They're very, some of the children of the Imam alayhi salam have very high level of authority. But some of the children do not have as high authority as some of the others. Their knowledge, their purity, so they're not, not everyone is equal. Not even all awliya are equal. Not even all the prophets are equal. Tilka rusul faddalna ba'dhum ala ba'd. Those messengers, apostles that we sent are not, we have given priority to some over the others. They're not all equal. So even if all prophets are infallible, they're not all equal. So even the people after the 14 infallibles, the people who may have authority, or people who may have vilayat, or people who may have some sort of connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who are very close to Allah, who are very revered, not all equal. But none of them are equal to the 14 infallibles. So our belief and my belief is that not even the other prophets are like the 14 infallibles, like the Holy Prophet Fatima and the 12 Imam. So even from the members of Ahlul Bayt, not everyone is like the 14 infallibles. And amongst the Ahlul Bayt, not all of them are like Hazrat Zain. They're not all sons of Imam Ali salam after Imam Hassan said are like Hazrat Abbas salam. He is on a completely different level. So you started me off there. So please.
Jazakallah. Okay. So I have got two questions related to oneness of God, if that's okay.
Yeah.
One is, so the attributes of God, their attributes, but if any one of us was to use an attribute of God to explain somebody else who may have the traits that are linked to the attribute, is that shirk? Because obviously, with there's always some allegations against Ahl Tashih that we have attributed certain traits of Allah to certain people, and just wanted to ask that question.
No, we do not say that attributes of Allah or the traits of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even we, for example, we are hearing and seeing. But are we like Allah, hearing and seeing? So we hear things and see things. Sami or Basir, he says, he speaks, we speak. So some people can see more. Some people can have more authority, who can see even beyond our reach.
So it's just different levels, basically.
Different levels, but their power is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For example, the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to the Sahaba, do not go into ruku and sujood before. And they said, Ya Rasulullah, how do you know we go to ruku and sajda before you? You are facing the Qibla and we are standing behind you. So he said, I see the same from behind just the way I see from the front. So that doesn't mean he's Sami or Basir like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But he has a lot more power and a lot more ability, a lot more vilayat than us that we cannot understand. So, and Imam al-Islam, innaka tasma'u ma asma wa tara ma ara. For example, the Holy Prophet says, Ya Ali, you see what I see and you hear what I hear. So you have a similar position like mine. So you have same as, so being same doesn't mean that they are gods. They have it from God. God has it because of himself. That's the difference.
Thank you. And then in terms of studying oneness of God from a Shia perspective, if you haven't already, could you just mention a couple of sources for lay people?
Yeah, so from Shia perspective, Nahjul Balagha, Quran and Nahjul Balagha, the best works of Tawheed. It explains everything. There's nothing like Nahjul Balagha. There's nothing like Sahifa Sajjadiyya. From Shia perspective, because the others accuse us of shirk, so we say it's Tawheed Dhati, Tawheed Sifati, Tawheed Af'ali. Allah is one in his essence. He is one in his attributes. He's one in his actions. And the fourth one we mentioned, Tawheed Ibadi. He is one in his, only he deserves to be worshipped. So there is no other being that deserves to be worshipped. That is the masterpiece of the Shia. وصلى الله على محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين.